What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are excited to talk about the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster. It has officially been finalized, although I use that word very loosely. The official sense of it really not literally true, because we know this thing is going to change in the coming days. But nevertheless, it is past 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday, August the 26th, 2025. And all 32 teams in the NFL have submitted their initial official 53-man rosters. A reminder, if you haven't yet, please like this video, subscribe to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. I have videos coming out each and every single day talking about our collective sickness, which is our Dallas Cowboys fandom. Live shows like this one, recorded videos, all sorts of interviews. Thurman Thomas, sometimes they're off the Dallas Cowboys path. Thurman Thomas on Monday, a good example of that. Got Drew Brees coming later on this week, and maybe another special guest who may or may not have won an NFL MVP in very recent memory. Who knows? No promises. These things are always subject to change, but that is technically what is on the docket. But so like the video, subscribe so you don't miss any of that stuff. If you like what I'm doing on social, I'm at RJ Ochoa on X, Instagram, and Threads, rj.ochoa on TikTok. Like my Facebook page, follow me on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, whatever you want. Email is rj.ochoa at sbnation.com if that is more your speed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the official Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster. This is available for you at bloggingtheboys.com. As you can see, going to go ahead and zoom in and we'll get up right there. Let's take a look at all 53 players who made the Dallas Cowboys team as of this moment in time. Let me zoom over so that's not in your face. Now, a couple of things here. As we talk about players who are not on this team, who are likely going to be on this team, I see you, Calvin Patel, saying, yo, what's going on? Hope your day's going great. You'll note that Will Grier is not here. Now, I would expect Will Grier to be back in some capacity. I did have him on my personal 53-man roster prediction, did a video about that. Obviously, was incorrect in that particular sense. My ultimate point in that was that I believe that Will Grier will be a part of this group. I think that Will Grier will be the third quarterback that this team suits up on game days, the emergency third quarterback. Maybe he's on the practice squad, whatever the case may be. But ultimately, I think that Will Grier is going to be on this team. Mark It Zero says, not a fan of losing Deuce, Brooks, and Holden, but I'm super stoked about Childress, Winfrey, and Houston. Talking about Joe Milton, obviously, he made it. I don't think there was any doubt that Joe Milton was going to make this team. But these are the two safest quarterbacks on the team, obviously. Your unquestioned starter in Dak Prescott, your unquestioned backup in Joe Milton. 4 running backs. This requires our first bit of context. Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders both made it, which is what it is. And I think that we are all way less upset about it because both Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa made it. Now, the necessary context to understand with Phil Maffa, in fact, let's back this thing up here because the Cowboys have a 53-man roster that is officially set. Cool. They have 2 players who are on injured reserve at this exact moment in time, Jonathan Mingo and Peyton Turner. Those 2 players must miss at least 4 games before being eligible to return. Now, relative to injured reserve prior to the finalization of a 53-man roster, the NFL allows each and every single team to put 2 players on the list. The Cowboys did so with Jonathan Mingo and Peyton Turner, as mentioned. Any other player who the Cowboys want to put on injured reserve, they must have carried on the initial 53-man roster. It was reported on Tuesday that Phil Maffa is a candidate for this, that Kalen Carson is a candidate for this. So you're looking at a 53-man roster in its initial moments, and you're seeing those 2 names, but they are very likely going to be stashed, or whatever you want to call it, on injured reserve in the next few days. You know, the way this whole thing tends to go, and those will open up roster spots for the likes of CJ Goodwin or whatever else the Cowboys decide to ultimately do. But that's how you have to play the roster gymnastics of it all. So if you're confused about why you see names, why you're not going to see names in a couple of days, that's kind of the TLDR. Back to the comments here. Philip says, can you see any waiver claims being made? Not at the moment, obviously. All this is brand new. Oh, Houston is Houston. I'm sorry. I'm all caught up in everything. Carlos says, catching the live. Market Zero says, I'm implying he gets a lot of juice. Haha, that's well said. All right, let's get back to what we're looking at here, the 53-man roster. So you see Phil Maffa. And again, I know that we all felt a certain way about the veteran running backs on this team. We all like, Javonte Williams. We all like Miles Sanders. This isn't about them. This isn't anything personal. It's not any kind of vendetta. We just wanted to make sure that the Cowboys kept both Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa. They may be putting Phil Mafah on injured reserve to start. He may have an injury, whatever the case may be. The ultimate, most important thing is that both players were kept. Both players are still under their 4-year rookie contract. So you want to keep your veterans for the first 4 games of the season, Cowboys, and check things out before you bring in Phil Mafah to save the day. Dare I say that Phil Mafah truly is Phil of the future. If you are a child of the 90s, I think that you understand that particular reference. Let's look down. Hunter Lipke, the lone fullback on the team. And at wide receiver, we have 5 names. And there's a little bit, I think, of pouring one out happening here. You got CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Kevontae Turpin. Those are the no-brainers, the slam dunks. I think that Jalen Tolbert was a slam dunk, but CeeDee Lamb was like a 360 slam dunk. George Pickens was like a windmill slam dunk. Kevontae Turpin was like a bouncing it off the backboard slam dunk. Jalen Tolbert was just like a literally, dunking the ball, in the hoop type of slam dunk. But whatever, still a slam dunk. I think we all knew he was going to make the team. Ryan Flournoy is the 5th wide receiver on this team at this particular moment in time. Trayshawn Holden did not make the team. Jalen Brooks did not make the team. And again, we all know that the Cowboys love to have CJ Goodwin on this team as a special teams player. And so we know that there are 2 roster spots that will be opened up, presuming that Phil Mafah and Kalen Carson are both placed on injured reserve. So who is that other roster spot? Because at the moment in time that we're chatting here, CJ Goodwin is not on the team. So he's going to take up one of those 2. Who's the other one? Is it another wide receiver? Are the Cowboys going to try to get Trayshawn Holden on the practice squad? I think that that's probably what makes the most sense in terms of reading what the Cowboys are trying to do. I think that they probably feel like Trayshawn Holden can make it to the practice squad. But let me say this. Trayshawn Holden had an outstanding training camp and an outstanding preseason for the Dallas Cowboys. I wish him well, whatever uniform he's wearing, and he's going to be wearing an NFL uniform. If he's on the Dallas Cowboys practice squad, if he's on the Dallas Cowboys active roster, whatever the case may be between the Cowboys franchise, however it ultimately winds up being, if it's with the Cowboys, that would be wonderful. But I think that Trayshawn Holden has some potential to get claimed by another team. He flashed that much. These are the risks you take, and they're calculated risks. You always have to let go of guys that you love and whatnot. And so we're all hoping and crossing our fingers that Trayshawn Holden is going to make it back. But let's remember now that if he gets claimed, it was a calculated risk the Cowboys had to take, and it will be unfortunate if he winds up elsewhere, but we can still root. What's going on? I think my internet, I had a crazy freak out on my computer, so I think we're back. That was weird. Cowboys carrying 5 wide receivers on the initial 53-man roster. Please let me know, somebody, if the internet is still stable. Let me check over here a couple other tabs. Yeah, I think I'm fine. So if I was out for a moment, apologies there. But let's get back to it. Tight end, the Cowboys have 3 on the roster at the moment in time. Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, Brevin Spanford. Princeton Fant was not kept on the active 53-man roster. I don't think there's anything really shocking here. This feels pretty chalk. This was among the most chalk positions that there were to predict for the Cowboys relative to their 53-man roster. So it is what it is. 9 offensive linemen. And the Cowboys did trade Awesome Richards throughout the construction process of this 53-man roster, sent him to the New Orleans Saints along with a 7th-round draft pick in 2028, which feels like forever from now. But nevertheless, that was what the Cowboys sent to New Orleans and to Kellen Moore. They did receive a 6th-round pick in 2028 in return for Awesome in the 7th-round pick. What's kind of funny about that, at least in my mind, is that Kellen Moore left the Cowboys in 2023, and that was the year the Cowboys drafted Awesome Richards in the 5th round. So he never got to technically work with him with the Cowboys. Now he gets to work with him in New Orleans. I digress. These are the 9 offensive linemen on the Cowboys roster at this moment in time. Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker, Terrence Steele, Brock Hoffman, TJ Bass, Nate Thomas, and Johnny Cornelius. Pretty chalk. I know some people wanted Adeniji to make the team, felt like that was going to happen. Sometimes we're off on this. Sometimes we're wrong. It just kind of is what it is. I had Awesome Richards making the team for what it's worth, so I was definitely wrong in that sense. But I've got no issues, no qualms with the way the Cowboys have gone about putting together their offensive line. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. There are 6 edge rushers. Micah Parsons, we're putting a bookmark in that situation for now, but he is on the active roster. Dante Fowler. There's a lot of 2nd-round draft picks here. Marshawn Nealon, Sam Williams, Donovan Ezra-Raku, obviously, and James Houston. How about this? How about we throw a little bit of a mini party? Let's throw a big party for James Houston making the 53-man roster. We have been saying that James Houston has to be a part of this team. And the fact that he joins the likes of Micah Parsons and Dante Fowler and Sam Williams and Marshawn Nealon and Donovan Ezra-Raku, he affirms that this is the deepest part of the Dallas Cowboys roster. That edge rusher position is what is going to make the difference for this team this year in 2025, whether they're good to really good or really good to great or great to really great, whatever the ultimate line of delineation is, it's going to happen because of the line that the pass rush draws in the sand. And James Houston making it is so awesome, so cool. He worked his tail off. He proved he had to be a part of the team. He made it impossible for them to cut him. So serious kudos, serious round of applause to James Houston for making the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster a very, very, very cool story. Let's get back to the rest of the group. Defensive tackle along the interior. Perrion Winfrey made it, and there are so many people. This actually was a huge point of contention. We'll get to this in a moment here. But Osa Digizua, Solomon Thomas, Mozzie Smith, Jay Toia, and Perrion are the 5 defensive tackles on this team. My first point is, look, I know that there are a lot of people upset that Mozzie Smith made the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster. I'll be straight up and frank with you. This is always an uncomfortable thing for me to talk about. I don't enjoy saying that a player should be cut or a player should be dismissed or a player should be moved on from or a coach should be fired. I don't find that to be enjoyable. It would hurt my feelings if people talked about me that way. And I know that Mozzie Smith has not played well. I know that you can certainly argue that, the Cowboys should do something different. But at this point in time, there is no real benefit to cutting him. It's just trying to prove a point. It's just trying to make yourself feel better. It's just, trying to do something to feel something. The Cowboys are invested. It never made practical sense for the Cowboys to cut Mozzie Smith in 2025. You want to have this conversation later on down the road? At that point, it begins to make more sense. But given the timeline of where he is in his rookie contract, this is never something that made any kind of sense. I know a lot of people talk themselves into it for reasons X, Y, and Z, but it never really felt practical or logical relative to the way that this all tends to work. I know that isn't necessarily what some people want to hear, but I think that it does make things a little bit better for you that Perrion Winfrey made the team. Now, on the Perrion Winfrey thing, let me switch to a different screen, because there was a moment in time, we'll all remember back in the early days of training camp when it was reported, this is not true, but when it was reported at first that Tyler Guyton tore his ACL, and we were like freaking out for 30 minutes, and then it came out that he hadn't torn his ACL. That was a crazy 30 minutes. We all remember that. There was a similar sort of thing going on with Perrion Winfrey on Tuesday. Maybe you missed it. Maybe you were at work. Maybe something was going on. Whatever. In case you did not know, let me put this on your screen now. It was initially reported throughout roster cuts that Perrion Winfrey did not make the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster. Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News was the person who reported this. So everybody's freaking out. Everybody's, going crazy. Everybody's saying this. Everybody's saying, how could Mozzie Smith make the team and Perrion Winfrey not make the team? I agree with you, Mike, saying $5 million owed for Mozzie. They weren't cutting him. And we can talk about the politics of the NFL and whether you think that's cool or not, but that is simply the objective reality of it all. But so Calvin Watkins and I don't know if you're saying Karam got him hot. This is not a shot at Calvin's awesome. I think Calvin is amazing. I'm just telling you what happened on Tuesday. We've all had bad moments. I've said incorrect things. So Calvin had the report that wound up being different, but I in no way intend this to be disrespectful or any kind of slight to Calvin Watkins. I think very highly of him. That being said, Calvin offered some clarity after it was reported. Actually, Ian Rappaport interacted with our Blog and the Boys Twitter account and said, actually, Perrion Winfrey made the 53. So this is all coming out in real time. Again, if you're, just learning all of this after the fact, like I said, it was kind of a crazy 30 minutes. So Calvin Watkins offered this. He said a change. Cowboys call defensive tackle Perrion Winfrey, telling him this is his last chance, and he's going to make the 53, according to a person with knowledge of the discussions. Winfrey thought he was getting cut, but he's here to say. Then Calvin added, I think the biggest thing was communication. Winfrey thought he was gone. Team was trying to tell him he needs to step up. I've never cut a player from an NFL team, right? Like I've never had to do that. I recognize it wouldn't be fun. I recognize it wouldn't be enjoyable. I recognize it's a part of the process and all this stuff. But did somebody miscommunicate this to Perrion Winfrey? Did somebody give Perrion Winfrey a message that sounded like he was cut when it was supposed to sound like he made the 53? I just have a very hard time believing that the wires were that dramatically crossed. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to pretend to know what happened. I'm ultimately grateful that Perrion Winfrey is on the Dallas Cowboys 53-man roster, but it was kind of weird. And again, to present it as this is his last chance, you made the team. Like, this is supposed to be a congratulatory thing. This is supposed to be an awesome thing. This is supposed to be a momentous thing. This is supposed to be like one of the best things, literally the best thing that can happen to you in this profession is to make an NFL roster, but you're being told as you do so, this is your last chance. It would be like getting an A+ and graduating and then being like, this is your last chance. All right, you're getting your diploma. Now get out of here. Like, it's just a weird kind of way to frame what did or didn't happen, at least from a 30,000 foot perspective. Obviously, we don't know what happened on an intimate level. But I digress. That was a weird part of what happened. The only really weird part in terms of what happened as far as roster cut down day was concerned for the Cowboys. But speaking of, let's get back to it. Here is the rest of the 53-man roster. And again, this is available at bloggingtheboys.com. Cowboys keeping 5 linebackers: Jack Sanborn, Kenneth Murray, very chalk, Maris Liufau, Damone Clark, and my fellow Florida Gator, Shamar James. Let's go, baby. Not that he was in any jeopardy, obviously, but it is very cool to have a Gator on the Cowboys roster. At corner, this is where it's a little interesting, and shout out to Zion Childress, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, Kyrie Lim, Kalen Carson, and Andrew Booth joining him to make 6. Now, there are 6 players there. Sometimes it makes sense to carry 6 corners on an NFL roster, but as noted, it has been reported that Kalen Carson is a candidate to be placed on injured reserve to start the season. That would mean he has to miss at least 4 games, and that's why it makes sense to have 5 corners, obviously, working, and maybe the Cowboys ultimately add to this. We'll get to that in a moment here because we don't know when Trayvon Diggs is going to return. We presume it's going to be sometime within the next few weeks because the Cowboys do not intend, at least reportedly, to place him on injured reserve. And the only reason they would not intend to place Trayvon on injured reserve is if they believe he can return sometime within the first 4 weeks of the season, because otherwise you would just put him on injured reserve. That being said, maybe Trayvon misses a game. Maybe he misses 2 games. Maybe he misses 3 games. But the ultimate point is he's going to at least miss 1 game. It stands to reason. Maybe he won't. I shouldn't even say that. Maybe he won't. But if he does, you need an option. You need about 5 corners to play an NFL game. So if we presume that Kalen Carson is on injured reserve and that Trayvon Diggs is out for however hypothetically long, whatever. Either way, that would leave only 4 players. That would mean the Cowboys probably need to add somebody at this point or at an upcoming point. You know, there's obviously lots of cut downs happening across the NFL. There's also still an opportunity to trade for veterans, different sorts of, avenues of roster construction. But it stands to reason that there is going to be a little bit of modification here for the Cowboys as they get ready for weeks 1 and 2 and 3, potentially until Trayvon Diggs is fully healthy and obviously until Kalen Carson comes back. But that means obviously that it made sense for Zion Childress to make this team, Andrew Booth to make this team. We'll see what happens to Booth and Childress as we reach a point where Trayvon Diggs is healthy and maybe Kalen Carson is healthy. If the Cowboys have added a player, do they move on from that player? My ultimate point is they're not going to have 7 corners on this team at any point in time. So that's a position that I think is going to feel like a deck of shuffling cards for a little while. At safety, the Cowboys have 4 names and they have 3 specialists. Very chalk here. Actually, I should say the chalkiest part of the entire thing, really. Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, Wanye Thomas, Marquise Bell at safety, and you see Brandon Aubrey, Brian Anger, and Trent Sieg, your 3 specialists. You do not and have not seen Izzy Mukwamu's name, which is just a super bummer. I don't know why Israel Mukwamu wouldn't make this roster, especially in a way or in a world where we just talked, right? Like, we acknowledge, we understand that the Cowboys are potentially going to, be a little bit up a creek early on in the season at cornerback, whether Trayvon Diggs is fully playing, whether Kalen Carson is on injured reserve, right? Like, we could talk about a number of different hypotheticals. So my point here, and I think the collective point, is that the Cowboys are going to need some bodies at corner. And so at the very least, wouldn't you keep Israel Mukwamu around to help you get through that point in time? I don't see the merit in cutting Izzy Mukwamu. I love his versatility. I've always loved his versatility. I love his attitude. I interviewed him right after he was drafted by the Cowboys, and he's just super awesome, been awesome in every single way. He's done everything asked of him, which has been playing a number of different positions. I just can't imagine why you wouldn't want that, especially in a time where you're going to need some depth at the cornerback position specifically. Maybe there's some nobility in releasing him. If we're trying to apply the benefit of the doubt here, maybe it's a matter of, look, we don't want to keep you around just for a cup of coffee. We want you to go find a chance to start somewhere else or whatever across the NFL. But I think we all think that Dan Quinn's going to be the first person to call him and be like, dude, let's figure this thing out because you can do a lot of things. And I like players who can do a lot of things. It was really sad to see Israel Mukwamu moved on by the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, let's take a look at some would-be. Actually, before we get to some notes, those are the players who made the team, if that isn't obvious at this point in time. This is a list of the players. The Dallas Cowboys PR department put this out shortly after roster cuts were due. This is a list of players who were cut. So let's move on here, zoom in so you can see difference between released and waived: players who were released are free to sign with a team right away. Players who were waived are subject to waivers. The Cowboys are currently 12th in waiver order. So if you're worried about anybody under the waived category, you'll see Trayshawn Holden there. You have to hope and cross your fingers that they're obviously going to make it to the Cowboys or go unclaimed, and that way are eligible to be signed to the Cowboys practice squad. But from a release standpoint, again, these are players who are not on the Cowboys roster. I don't know that there's anyone here that has really broken any hearts. And there are some players here who are ultimately going to wind up back on this team in some capacity. CJ Goodwin is an example. Will Greer. And a lot of these guys ultimately could wind up back up on the practice squad. Maybe Keeman Hall is an example of that. Maybe we're looking down at the wave category here. Let me zoom a little bit. Maybe Malik Davis finds his way back. Maybe Deuce Vaughn finds his way back. Deuce Vaughn obviously moved on from. I don't think that was surprising to anybody. I think we all kind of anticipated this would be the case. But Izzy Mukuamu, you see a release and therefore eligible to, if Dan Quinn hits him up, just get on the next flight to DC and go sign with the Commanders like 400 Cowboys players before him. I think Izzy Mukuamu is the name on here that I'm most upset about. And I say that with all due respect to each and every single player who was a roster cut by the Cowboys on Tuesday. But other than that, these things all make sense, certainly relative to situation. And again, relative to the ones they're probably bringing back in all likelihood, like CJ Goodwin, like Will Greer. So I don't have any real issues with the way the Cowboys handled their final 53-man roster situation, other than the fact that they moved on from Izzy Mukuamu. Now, let's take a look at some potential lines of opportunity or some potential moves the Cowboys could make, courtesy of ESPN's Todd Archer. Todd put these really well. Let's put his tweets up on the screen. And he noted Will Greer could return to the practice squad to give the Cowboys 3 quarterbacks with him. Dak Prescott and Joe Milton would look for Akeem Adeniji, CJ Goodwin to return to the roster as soon as Wednesday, with Phil Moffitt and Kalen Carson heading to injured reserve. So those are the 2 potential dominoes to take place of the ones that will fall when the Cowboys make the moves, make the modifications that we've been talking about here. If Trayvon Diggs doesn't suit up in week 1, then UDFA corner Zion Childress would handle the slot. That's week 1, next Thursday night, against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're talking about, in that world, Kyler Elam and Deron Bland on the outside with Zion Childress in the slot. That would kind of be a holy crap, welcome to the NFL moment, right? Like, you are an undrafted free agent and you've got to go play the slot against the world champions. That would be a difficult bet to make, which is why, to Todd's point, the Cowboys could ultimately put in a claim in themselves for a different corner who was waived by a different team, or just look to players who were released, right? Like, I think we all agree. In fact, I think it's hard to make predictions when it comes to the roster, because you simply don't know exactly what the Cowboys are doing and how they're operating and what they're thinking. But I think it stands to reason that obviously some players who the Cowboys moved on from are going to be back on this team. But I think beyond that, it stands to reason that there's probably somebody who has been on a different NFL team up to this point who is going to put on a Cowboys uniform next Thursday night in Philadelphia. That just makes sense based on the needs the Cowboys have, based on the types of roster cuts the Cowboys made, and based on the talent the Cowboys have had and have not had at certain positions up to this point. The Cowboys have done some things, ever since last season ended. We've given them their flowers in certain capacities, but the well has run dry in a number of different areas, particularly at corner, and is going to be particularly dry in the season opener. So it makes a lot of sense to presume or to assume or to predict that there is a player who has not been on the Cowboys roster, has not been in their building, has not been a part of their training camp or preseason process, that will be running out of the visitors' tunnel with them next week when they kick off in Philadelphia against the Eagles. But that's just a prediction. You never know how those things are going to go. I'm curious if there are any other things that anybody is upset about, because I truly don't think there's anything to be bothered by. I think that everything that happened was, like I said, fairly predictable. And something that we can live with. I think that it was all, fine and dandy. I mean, in terms of putting together the group that we anticipated them putting together, it is unfortunate. And I'll reiterate that, you never want to see a player cut. It's unfortunate that this has to happen. It's unfortunate that NFL dreams are ending for so many people, and you just never want that. So I hope you all agree that it would be wonderful if every player who the Cowboys moved on from found a job somewhere else, found a spot somewhere else, found a roster spot somewhere else, and was able to continue their hopes and dreams and aspirations and goals goals of playing in the NFL. I should also mention, as we just kind of tie a bow on the specifics of where the Cowboys roster is, we've talked about the players who are on the 53. That's literally 53 names. We've talked about the players who the Cowboys ultimately cut and moved on from, some of whom they're probably going to be bringing back in all likelihood. Again, Adeniji and Greer are the names that make the most sense at this moment in time. There are a few other distinctions. We did speak about Jonathan Mingo and Peyton Turner already being on injured reserve. Well, the Cowboys have two players on the PUP list as well. DeMarvion Overshown and Josh Butler are there, so they've got to figure out that situation, what that's going to look like ultimately. And they do still have Savon Ravel on the NFI list. And again, as we've explained, the reason Savon Ravel is on NFI and not on PUP is because Savon Ravel is a rookie, and so his injury, granted it did occur during a football game, did not occur in the NFL. It occurred while he was playing college football. That, feels obvious, but again, from a semantic standpoint, that's what we're dealing with here. Steel Hero 68 says, I always thought CJ Goodwin is a very good special team member. That me. We will see. It's interesting that Todd Archer noted that Adeniji and Greer are the players that the Cowboys, will probably be bringing back. There have been some reports. I saw Patrick Walker of DallasCowboys.com noting that CJ Goodwin could or would be returning to the 53 as well. Or at least to the practice squad, right? Like there are different ways, there are different kind of paths or, outlets in terms of ways to get creative in terms of not necessarily assembling your 53-man roster, but assembling your 53-man roster and your practice squad, because you get those elevations on game day. So you have some ways to kind of, work that and figure it out so that, you're not costing yourself a player or subjecting a player to waivers that you don't want to. I mean, I think you get my point. But if we presume that the Cowboys do want to bring back to some degree, to some capacity, Adeniji, Greer, and Goodwin, that's 3 roster spots that the Cowboys would need, when we know or we believe that the Cowboys are going to be placing 2 players on injured reserve that are currently not there, in Phil Maffa and Kalen Carson. So 3 minus 2 is 1. That would mean there's another roster spot the Cowboys are going to have to create in some way. And maybe the answer to that is that Will Greer isn't on the 53. He's on the practice squad. That's what I'm talking about. Like, there's going to be a way the Cowboys do this, and they're going to have arrangements and deals and negotiations with players. Hey, you're going to be on the practice squad, but we're going to be elevating you every game, or whatever. It just is all about how you do this, how you put this together, so that you can have the best overall group. The number 53 is what is the most concrete and technical, but when you think about it, it's much larger than that when you're, including who you have accessibility to in any given week, obviously, as you prepare for that particular NFL game, that particular week. But that's it. I mean, and again, it's a hard day. It's a terrible day. And it's just never fun. It's never a good thing. It is the last thing until it is fully all systems go, right? Like with the, as we've talked about here and as we've been talking about, there will be some modifications and changes and little adjustments to the roster throughout the next few days. But it is here now. It is fully here. Obviously, training camp's over. Obviously, preseason's over. And now roster cutdowns are over. This is it. This is the group. This is for the most part, right? And there will be changes throughout the season. That goes without saying. But for the most part, this is the group that will either deliver the ring to Mordor or be the group that walks away from the season without winning the Super Bowl and ensures that the franchise will reach 30 years of a drought. I know we throw out the term 30 years, the number 30 years all the time. It's in an approximation sort of sense, because this is Super Bowl 60. The Cowboys last appeared in Super Bowl 30. So if they do not do it this year, they will officially go 30 years. It won't be approximate. It will be actual, factual, objective data. And so this is the group that's either going to take this franchise down the road of finally fixing this whole thing, or being just like the last 29 and adding to the jokes, adding to the memes, adding to the whatevers. So no pressure on this group of 53 or this group of 62 or whatever it ultimately winds up being with all the designations and whatnot. It's here and it's real. Rick Ursulini says, woohoo for Perrion Winfrey, James Houston, Zion Sotos, Jay Tuia, Phil Maffa. Love it. Yeah. Phil Maffa obviously on injured reserve to start, but thank goodness, gracious, he's on the team, and we don't have to worry about him getting claimed by somebody else. I think that would have made the next 24 hours a very, very, very long stretch of time for all of us. So Phil Maffa is a Cowboy. We don't have to worry about that. We'll figure out everything else as we move along. It's been a joy to discuss the 53-man roster with you all. I'll be back on Wednesday, like I said, with an interview from Drew Brees. Looking forward to that. So make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe, because we have all sorts of fun stuff coming out all the time. I've got daily videos, daily discussions after each and every single Dallas Cowboys game. Also got Dallas Cowboys postgame shows that stream live here on the YouTube channel, as well as live in the Bleacher Report app. I've also got content all over the place. Make sure you're checking out bloggingtheboys.com for the latest and greatest in Dallas Cowboys news, discussion, and analysis from myself and our talented staff. I'm on social, X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. Like my Facebook page. Follow me on LinkedIn, Blue Sky. Email us, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. Or, as always, you can leave a comment down below, and I'll do my very best to get to those as well. I've got my my draft in my fantasy league of record tonight, so I know you all care very much. I know you don't, but please, at the very least, wish me luck. I'm the only 4-time champion, and I remind everybody of that. So I'm going for number 5 here in 2025. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody, and we'll see you next time.